Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Love Restore. I'm your favorite host, Marshaun Olaniyan, and you are listening to and or watching KCCR Brownstone Cityscapes Radio. So we have been talking about dating and specifically dating for women 40 plus who are and have been trying to figure out how to date properly, if you will, and even to re-enter the dating stages and what that actually looks like. And so today we are talking about another topic. It is one where a lot of us don't really give much make make as important as it really should be, and it is recognizing the red flags. And so for these next 30 minutes we will be talking about red flags, what they are, how to recognize them, why it is important to do that, and why we should assess these things specifically so we're not just wasting time, energy, and effort. Because as we know, as mature Black women, whether we are re-entering the dating stages, we have just finished or a relationship and now we're like, okay, I'm ready to get back out here, it's better to be able to recognize these red flags earlier than later on. And this is one of the things that I didn't realize when I was out there dating and before I got into my marriage, because it was one of the things that I didn't recognize. I didn't realize that this was something that I should pay attention to. And so let's talk about it, right? Because the red flags that we ignored in our 20s and maybe even in our 30s, thinking that they were maybe just quirks or that they were temporary things. Think about it. How many of us, how many of you out there have stayed in relationships that didn't serve you because you thought things would change? I can raise my hand to that. But now, as we have mature Black women who are professionals, we've learned the hard way that ignoring these red flags is the fastest way for our hearts to be broken. And so when you start to reflect about your 20s and even your 30s, you can probably pinpoint some of those moments when you ignored the red flags that were in that particular relationship that you were in. And so maybe it was the small voice in the back of your mind saying something feels off, or those behaviors that you noticed, but you chose to downplay them because you didn't want to rock the boat. You didn't want to start all over. There are plenty other excuses that we have come up with in our 20s and 30s. And so now 40s, 50s, 60s, we want to be able to date with more clarity, understanding what's actually happening, recognizing these red flags sooner. So again, the time, energy, effort, the wanting to build upon something doesn't go by the wayside by wasting your time, energy, and effort on a man that does not have your best interests at heart, that is not looking for the same thing that you're looking for, right? And so in that, maybe you told yourself something like, it's just how he is, right? He'll grow out of it. Or maybe I'm being too insensitive or being too sensitive. Or maybe I just have to love him harder and he will change. But here's the thing about that. People rarely change unless they want to. And red flags usually are not isolated incidents. They are patterns and signs of deeper issues that will often escalate if they are left unchecked, right? So we don't want to do that. What you dismissed as quirks and temporary in your 20s and 30s, right? Like him being emotionally unavailable, or him being dishonest, or him putting the lack of effort into the relationship, it really turned out to be those very things that catapulted you to saying, enough is enough. I'm actually done with this. I'm not receiving what I want, which led to the disappointment, the heartache, and the eventual breakup, right? And so we don't want to waste any of that. So it's now time for us to start recognizing these red flags much sooner, because as mature women, we have gained the wisdom that comes with the experience that we have lived through, right? And so we know that there are consequences to ignoring red flags, and we do not want to do that. We do not want to be on that end of the stick any longer, right? And so here's the truth, though. Spotting red flags is also an act of self-love. It's a way of saying, I know what I'm worth. And unless I am receiving what I'm asking for, I will not settle for less. It's about prioritizing the relationships that align with your values, that help to uplift you rather than to drain you, right? I remember when the relationship that I was in, I made a decision to walk away from it because I was like, hey, I'm feeling drained. I'm not feeling like I am receiving the very thing that I am giving. But then also, I felt like it was more of a subtraction versus an addition to my life. And so I want you to sit back and think about this yourself. The relationship that you were previously in, or maybe that you're in right now, is this person adding to you or subtracting from you? Are they your place of joy and happiness? Or do you feel some frustration and some bitterness or even some resentment when they come around? How do you spot the red flags, right? And it really starts with paying attention to how someone makes you feel when you are in their company. So if you're feeling like you're constantly being disrespected, you feel like yourself has anxiety around this person where you don't feel like you can be yourself around them, right? If you feel like they're not prioritizing you, your time, right? Making you a priority in their life. But then also, I said disrespect, but I want to specifically mention the disrespect of your time, right? Because all of us, now that we've lived lives and we have some age upon us, we have responsibilities in our life where we could be putting time, energy, and effort into something else if this person is not giving you what you want. And so time is of the essence in our years now, 40s, 50s, and 60s. 20s and 30s, we felt like we had a lot of energy. We felt like we had a lot of time to waste. So let's jump into how to spot these red flags faster. The first one is consistency or the lack thereof. How consistent or even inconsistent is he? So maybe he'll say one thing, but his actions says something else. Like he says that he's going to call you at a certain time, but the call comes much later or not at all, right? He says that he's going to make a date with you, right? And you have yet to hear from him about the date, right? The time, the place, everything that goes into planning a date, right? He says that he's a leader, but your experience with him has shown that you have taken on the leadership role, right? And so you really want to see, is his words matching up to what his actions is? How consistent or inconsistent is he with some of the things that he made? And maybe even it could be even things like promises, right? So maybe he made some promises that has never been kept. The very thing that we ignored in our 20s and 30s, as I mentioned before, the inconsistency, this is a red flag. You should absolutely pay attention to, is he being consistent in his word? Is he being consistent in his actions? Is he being consistent in his promises? Is he being consistent in everything that he is doing? And if he is not, if he has, or it has been willing to at least give you an explanation to say, this is what I was planning to do. This is what actually happened. Hence, plan didn't go through, and not ducking and dodging from it, not making excuses for it, right? Because sometimes the truth of the matter about excuses is that they absolutely could be valid, but at the same time, you are left feeling some type of way. Your needs were not met, right? The expectations that you had were not met. And so you want to make sure that it's more in alignment versus not in alignment with the things that you want from your life out of the relationship that you are in or will be in, right? And so if you're not currently in a relationship, I want you to think about your previous relationships. Take some time to reflect and say, hey, how have I noticed some inconsistencies in my previous relationships? And how did you, right? So ask yourself, how did I play a part in allowing said behavior to continue on? Because a lot of times we have a tendency to continue to just point the finger at the other person, not realizing that we play a part in how the other person is treating us. So were your standards when you attracted this person in alignment? Did you set boundaries behind said things? Did you allow him to understand the things that you wanted in your relationship, right? So all of this literally builds upon one another. And so if he was inconsistent What part did you play in him being inconsistent? How did you set up the relationship in the beginning? Were there some inconsistencies there already that you decided to ignore, right? For the sake of being a part of something, when in reality, the emotional connection was not there. The integrity of himself was not there. And you're creating and or making excuses, right? And so we have to not only look at his behavior and his habits, we also have to look in the mirror and reflect on how we showed up and the things that we allowed. The other way to recognize red flags faster is dismissiveness of your worth. Now, what does that mean? So this could be where he is minimizing your goals. It could be he's minimizing your dreams, or even your contribution to the relationship as a whole. All of these are glaring red flags, right? Because you don't want somebody to make you feel less than you actually are. And a part of that is you have to already know your worth before you get into a relationship. And I believe that this is some of the part and why a lot of us went through ups and downs in our 20s and 30s, because you're trying to figure out yourself. You're trying to figure out life, trying to figure out your place, right? How do you be and or create a healthy relationship? Because most of us were not taught these things, right? And I get that. I get that. But now in your 40s and 50s and 60s and even beyond, you should be asking yourself, is this man, the person that I'm trying to build a relationship with and or a life with, how supportive is he of my worth? And that's something you have to just start paying attention to, right? But when you specifically mention your goals or your dreams or your aspirations, the things that you want to leave behind, the legacy that you want to leave for your child or children, the empire that you're trying to build, right? That all the things that keep your life stable so you can build the life that you really want to be a part of. How is he leaning into that? Is he making you feel like he can be and or is showing up as your biggest cheerleader? Is he giving you words of encouragement or like, I got you, this is awesome, I believe in you, go and do, and then come back and so we can, have our date or have the conversation or let me know how it went, whatever the thing is. And so this is something that you don't want to struggle with in your relationship. You're feeling that you're not enough and having to prove that you are worthy in order to be in that relationship. And so if he's dismissing your value, if he's dismissing your worth, if he's dismissing your dreams, he's dismissing your goals, he's just, your goals, he's dismissing the contribution that you're even bringing to the relationship, that is something you should pay attention to. Another, or the third way to recognize red flags faster is, do you feel rushed into this or the relationship period? Do you feel like you're being pushed too quickly to commit, right? And this is without you giving your time to get to know them, right? And or it can be a red flag for controlling behaviors or a unwillingness to let the relationship unfold naturally. So you do not want to feel like you're being pushed or rushed into a relationship, because research has actually shown when someone tries to jump into and or try to put a title on the relationship too fast, as fast as they are willing to rush into it, is literally as fast as it will be, your balloon will be deflated and he will be gone. Maybe you'll get ghosted, because if you're rushing into something, you should be paying attention to that being a red flag, because what is he running away from? Why is he in such a rush to put a title on it? And I'm talking about like weeks into it. And if you're there, right, you're not feeling rushed, this is not for you. What I'm saying is that you don't feel like you know enough about him. You don't feel like you've spent enough time. Maybe he's trying to rush it so the two of you can move in together, right? And there's some underlying things with that. Maybe he doesn't have a place. Maybe he turns out to be a squatter. Let's be real. Things happen. Maybe, he's running away from an ex, right? He's trying to just whatever. There's many scenarios that this could be. the point. If you are not where he's at, then you should say, okay, I'm feeling rushed. Why? Ask some probing questions to get to why he feels he needs to rush into this relationship with you so fast. Is it because of some of the conversations that you had and what you have exposed about your life, about the things that you have, your materialistic things, but also it could be deeper things like your wheels and your trust and your accounts, and because people have been known to marry for other reasons than love and really wanting to build. So you just have to be careful. Again, if you're not feeling like your gut is saying go along with the program, then you should be asking some questions like, okay, I'm not feeling very, not feeling like we should be doing all of this right now. So what's actually happening with him? And then your next step would be to, again, ask probing questions to see why he's in such a rush. And then after that, after you have the conversation and you're asking probing questions, now it's time for you to go away and reflect to see if you heard something that he mentioned where you should take some steps back, rethink, or even to try and slow things down. Because maybe what he said makes sense, but something in your gut is still not allowing you to say yes today. Then now it's still time for you to slow things down and continue to ask more questions or whatever. Maybe you're not ready to walk away today, but I absolutely wouldn't say yes to being in a full-fledged relationship when your body is telling you something isn't right. And maybe you just can't pinpoint what that something is. So just allow things to unfold as naturally as you can. Slow things down. Be intentional about not being in his space and in his face every time he wants to, because he wants to. You want it to be a mutual thing, right? And so you just have to pay attention to this as a red flag. If he's moving too fast, or if you feel like he's trying to push you into moving too fast, then you should be paying attention to, okay, something don't feel right about this. And what is that this? You may get an answer, you may not. But do not, I repeat, do not ignore that something is off. As soon as we start to ignore it, right, going back to our 20s and 30s, the very thing that we ignore is the very thing that we have to deal with, and where the disappointment and all of the resentment and the frustration comes from later on in the relationship. And so if you can stop yourself early on, do that. If everything is in alignment, you're feeling like the two of you are on one accord, thumbs up, do it. It's only you pay attention to the rush if you are feeling seriously rushed. So inconsistency. Now we have being rushing into the relationship, as well as the dismissiveness of your worth. So the fourth way to recognize red flags sooner is that he may show jealousy or even possessiveness early on. Now, it might seem flattering at first, right? Because all of us want somebody to be into us, right? And to showcase it to the world that they're into us. Absolutely. But if they're consistently questioning who you're with, needing to know your every move, or making you feel guilty for having your own life, that's a major red flag for unhealthy behavior. Being possessive, being possessed later on. Like, if I can't have you, no one else will type of scenario later on. That will be where you feel, or you start to feel like you have to start cutting off certain people and certain relationships in order to make your partner happy. Not realizing that this is a pattern for you to solely be reliant on him, whether it's financially, whether it's emotionally, all of the things that come with it, right? And so it starts off slow. It seems very innocent. Maybe you at some point you've made excuses for his behavior, or have done in previous relationships, but looking back on it, you're like, no, that's not something that I want to deal with. Like, I can see myself in a domestic violence situation if I continue to go down this road with him. So pay attention to the signs of him being jealous or overly possessive. This was something that I didn't deal with it on a large scale, but I did notice it with my husband. and where I started to shut down and cut off all of those relationships that I mentioned before, he would always find something wrong with the person that I was speaking to. And we had a pretty open marriage in the sense that it wasn't shut down to only women that I can, converse with and or hang out with. But anyway, it didn't matter if it was the man or a woman. At some point, he had something to say about everybody. And I noticed that I was starting to cut off a lot of these people because he didn't like it. And then just one day, at some point, I have no idea what happened, but I started to recognize I keep getting rid of all these people and he ain't got rid of nobody because I don't care that he talks to and hangs out with. Right? Unless there was some energy that was coming our way and that was affecting our marriage, but it wasn't. So I was just like, well, what's actually happening with this? And long story short, I remember I put my foot down and I was just like, listen, I don't know what you finding about this particular person. Something is wrong, but I'm not getting rid of this friendship. And after literally I put my foot down, he never asked me to get rid of or found something wrong about somebody else that I was hanging out with and or keeping company with. Because I was just like, I don't know what's happening. Like every person, I'm noticing a pattern here, sir. Every person I talk to and or bring around in my space and in our face, you have a problem with something about them. And so it started to just, whether he was jealous or whether he's possessive, I didn't want to go down that road where I was 100% isolated and or dependent on him. So I just stopped doing it. Literally, that's what I did, because we didn't divorce until later on, but I just stopped doing it. I was like, I don't know what's happening, but that's going to be a no for me. So I just stood my ground. So anyway, pay attention to jealousy or signs of possessiveness. Now, if you're feeling like these are some of the things that are coming up for you, I literally created a guide for professional Black women. And the guide is literally telling you how professional Black women can date with confidence. So I'm going to put the link here and I want you to click on the link. And it is a product that I took some time, energy, and effort to really think about some of the things that you would need in order to be confident and showing up on your date and paying attention to, right? So they were talking about red flags, talking about how to increase your confidence. So a lot of these things that we are speaking about today, specifically red flags, will not affect you because you won't even go down that road. So I highly recommend that if that sounds like something that you need as a professional Black woman on how to date with confidence, I highly suggest that you pick up that. It's a downloadable PDF and you go to the link and it is a few dollars, right? So it's a few dollars to do that. But I know that you will be able to understand some of the areas that you're weak in, as well as some of the areas that you're strong in, continue to be strong in. Those areas, your weak areas, let's get to working on your weaker areas. So when you're out there fully dating, again, you can recognize these red flags earlier, but you also can feel like I don't have to waste my time, energy, and effort because I do understand my worth. I know what I'm bringing to the table and I know what I'm willing to give is the same thing that I'm asking for. So if that doesn't sound like something that there's a need for, I understand. But if you do feel like that's something, she sounds like she's talking to me, then I highly recommend that you check out the link to purchase your PDF guide about how to professional women can date with confidence. Absolutely. Okay. So now let's jump back into the signs. The fifth way to pay attention to red flags earlier or recognize them earlier is, what were their previous relations stability like? So do they have a pattern of unstable relationships? So think about some of the talks that you've had, or I should say that he specifically has had about his previous relationship, and if they frequently talked about falling out with their friends, right? And this is relationships with everybody, so not just romantic, although it could include romantic, right? So we'll say the falling out with their romantic partner. Was there falling out with their friends? Was there falling out with family? Was there falling out with coworkers, right? So pay attention to these because this could indicate an inability to maintain a healthy relationship in general, not just romantic, but just in general. So when they're talking about the relationship with their friends or families or coworkers or exes, Observe their patterns of connection with the other people. Are they still in contact with them, including the romantic partner, and or not? But just how are they talking about the relationship? Was it always somebody else's fault on why things didn't go their way? And again, this is not just in a romantic sense. This is in all the relationships that you hear about. Have you noticed patterns where it's always someone else's fault? Have you always noticed that there is blame put on someone else, but there is never an accountability or responsibility taken for himself? So is he displaying unstable relationship patterns to you based off of the conversations that you had and or have heard from him? All right. The sixth way to find out red flags earlier is to understand that or I should say it this way, have your needs been consistently overlooked? Thinking about if your needs have been dismissed, right? Has he dismissed your feelings or ignored your needs, whether your needs were emotional, whether they were physical, or any other need that you had, right? So this could be a clear sign that they're not prioritizing you or the relationship. Consistently overlooking your needs, especially. Now, I want to back up and say, and I'm saying especially is because sometimes we have this unwritten expectations in our head that we think the other person should know. And so I want to back up a little bit and make sure that you have had the conversation to say, this is what I need. This is what I expect. This is my desire, right? These are my goals, etc. Right? So being able to say that you've had said conversation, so he should be aware that you need some emotion, right? Emotional conversation in him to have a decent EQ, which is emotional intelligence, right? And what is your physical, right? So the point is that you have established said conversation. You have asked for the things that are important for you in the relationship. And now you're able to say, my needs, my wants, my desires have been consistently overlooked, right? And so that is the pattern, that your needs, your wants, your desires have been consistently overlooked. And then the last way to recognize the red flags much sooner is to pay attention about how he has spoken. And I mentioned this before, but how has he spoken about his past romantic relationships? And were they more positive or were they more negative? Because you want to pay attention to how he has talked about his exes, right? And if they have always blamed all of their failed relationships or their ability to grow from their mistakes, and they have blamed them on other people because they haven't taken accountability, as I mentioned before, right? And this is a lack of self-awareness. And they won't be able to grow from their past mistakes because it's everybody else's fault. That is a red flag that you don't want to go down that path. I've been there, I've done that, and it's not any fun. And I remember talking to a girlfriend of mine, and she was telling me how she was trying to decide if she was going to stay in a relationship for this very reason. Her partner could not take accountability for his actions, for the things that he said he was going to do, the things that were not in alignment, right? And so at the end of it, they were together for several years, but at the end of it, she decided to walk away. He wanted to get married. She was like, nah, you can't even take accountability for the small things. So just imagine if something major happens, then how are we going to come out on the other side if we did? And so she decided to walk away. And I know that was a tough decision, but recognizing how they speak about their past partners and or you reflecting on, how was he? Right? Did he take accountability? Did he have a self-awareness about him, the things that he did, the things that he said, the actions, right? And if not, then that is the issue altogether. So with that being said, thank you so much for being here, watching this whenever, right? These 30 minutes that you have taken out of your day to be here with Love Restored. Your host, Marshaun Olaniyan, that's me. And you are listening to and or watching KCCR Brownstone Cityscapes Radio. As I mentioned before, that downloadable guide for how to date, how professional women, how Black professional women can date with confidence. Go ahead and click the link and get your copy today. I love you guys, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I will see you on the next